Hey everyone, welcome to Hope for Survival. Miss Lucy here with Bravo Echo, and we're going to do a little podcast to show you how we go about canning chicken. One of the meats that we do choose to can for our food supplies. We do use them now, and we also store them for some time later. Um, it's a good source of protein. And it's healthy for you, but you got to do it in a safe manner.
So there is a disclaimer that what you attempt to do with your canner is totally on you. Make sure that you read the booklet, follow the guidelines and instructions carefully, and you will have a good experience in canning. And also, if you would like to make use of your local government, you have some resources available with county extension offices and agents. If you would happen to acquire a canner secondhand and not purchase one new, they are able generally to go ahead and check out the parts on it and make sure that it's good operational use for you, as well as being a resource for you. So check them out as well.
Anything else? With Miss Lucy, and I conned her into letting me podcast her, and she's going to teach me how to can chicken using a pressure canner. So I'm going to let her walk me through that, and hopefully we'll be able to put a podcast. A lot of folks ask the question on how do you can chicken or beef and so forth. So here's the basic walkthrough. Miss Lucy?
Hey guys. So really make sure that you have a pressure canner. This is very different than a water bath canner because the pressuring of the food is going to help keep spoilage from occurring because of microorganisms. So we want to make sure that we've killed those off with pressure. So this is going to get up to about 240 degrees. And so we'll make sure that this is safe to eat when we want to use it. Why do I like to can chicken? Because it's convenient. It's already prepared to use in soups, chicken and dumplings, casseroles, chicken salad. So just whatever ways you would normally use cooked chicken. This is also just a convenient, easy way to already have that process taken care of for you. So I will show you some of the parts here to the pressure canner that we have. These are readily available at any of your online retailers or your local stores. This one is a Presto pressure canner, and it is well used. We've had this probably for 5 years or so, and the inside of the book, as you can see, has been referenced quite a bit. So that's what you want to do. Once you've obtained a pressure canner, make sure that you read all the instructions to it. That's going to keep you safe. Some folks have heard the stories of it blowing up, which can happen if it's not properly used. We are at our apartment that has the old style stove with the coil burners on it. That's preferably the way to go because there has been instances of the flat surface cooktops getting so hot that they've actually melted through. So if you have access to just the old style of stove, that's the best way, but we have done it on the other one as well without any problems. So part of the pressure canner that you want to be sure that you check out is the gasket, because this is what's going to seal it. So you look to make sure that there's no tears or rips on that. It's a rubber gasket. Another part to it is the weighted gauge. This is what's going to determine your pressure. We are going to be using 10 pounds of pressure, and in this particular style there is a cap, and then there's 2 weights that go on it. All together it's 20. If I take off one, it's 10. If I take off all of them, it's 5. And the reason that that's important is because when you reference your book, it's going to tell you at what pounds of pressure you want to do it at. So in referencing here, canning poultry, which is what we're doing with the chicken, at 10 pounds of pressure, we're going to do pints without the bone, because these are just going to be skinless, boneless fillets, breast meat, and so that's going to be for 75 minutes. So we are going to do our gauge at 10 pounds of pressure. So I'm going to remove one of the weights. So now we have our 10 pounds of pressure. The other very important part of your canner is that you want to make sure any of the vents and exhaust are doing what they're supposed to do. So there is safety features to it that if you would build up too much pressure in it, it will actually blow the steam off. I've been known to do that myself sometimes, blow off a little steam. So it's important that all these are in good working parts. One of the big things is to make sure that the vent that the steam is going to come out of, and what I'm going to use the word jiggle, real technical, it's going to jiggle that little weight that we put on it. But the way that I do it, there's actually two ways. You can blow through it, and if the air goes through it, it's good. Or you can hold it up to a light, and as long as you can see through to the other side and you got daylight, well then this is all clear. This little section right here, this is going to pop up and down. When it goes up, that means that you've obtained the correct amount of pressure in the canner. And so when it is through the complete canning process and you let the pressure go out, this will drop down. And that's when it'll be safe to remove your lid. Anytime that this is up, that means stop. Do not open up this canner because it will be full of pressure. So, very important. Now to get started on the actual canner itself, we're going to drop in this rack. You want to use the rack because that's going to prevent the jars from sitting directly on the source of heat. So always use the rack and set that down in the bottom. We are going to install, as Butch is doing here, the gasket into the rim of the canner lid. So that is fitting in there all around tightly. And we will get back to that in just a moment. Oh, I do have 3 quarts of water that's already prepped here in the canner. It's going to be ready to have the jars that we're going to fill here with chicken and just set down over in it. As far as jars are concerned, do not go cheap on your jars. The standard is a ball mason jar. Do not use leftover mayonnaise jars, pickle jars, cheap jars. I have used, tried one from a big box retailer that was their store brand, and they are just not the quality and thickness of what a good old ball mason jar is. The same thing goes with the lids. Do not use a cheap lid. Again, this is 240 degrees. And it's at 10 pounds of pressure is going to be in this canner for well over 2 hours from start to finish. So if you are using a cheap lid, and we have done it ourselves, I'm speaking from experience, they will warp and become twisted. And if you don't get a good seal on your product, well then you're basically going to have to use that right away because it's not going to do what we intended, which is to can it and be able to put it on a shelf and keep it for years to come. Speaking of which, I'll just go ahead and show you. I have a stew here, and the date on the top of it is July of 2015. This was some beef that we had. We picked up a 50-pound bag of potatoes, so I made up a bunch of beef stew. So this is ready to go right out of the can as is, and I will not hesitate at all to pop the lid on this. Butch can cook dinner for me one night. Just heat it up. He could throw some biscuits in the oven, and we could throw those in a bowl and pour some of this over the top of it, and it would make for a nice hearty meal on a cold winter night like we're having right now. So canning's a good thing to do in the winter as well because it is going to heat up your residence, your kitchen area. So if you're wanting to look for a little extra warmth for the night, which is kind of what we're doing, it's a boring cold night. So it will heat up. So in the summertime, if you got other things that you can be doing like vegetables, then you know it's going to make your house pretty warm. So just keep that in mind. Kind of can in the winter if you can, especially for the meat products. So Speaking of which, let's go right to what we need to do. I have already prepped some of my jars, and I am using a pint jar, and it's one that's called a wide mouth. You can see that this one is larger on the top than the other one that I have here. This would be the small mouth jars. This is a large mouth. This just happens to work out better for doing the meat, putting it in, and cleaning out the jars once you've actually used the cooked chicken. It leaves a little bit of a residue in there, so you're able to get in there and clean the jar out. And of course, these get reused over and over, so that's another great thing about canning. Once you have a lot of your supplies, you just keep using them over and over. So I have put these in the dishwasher and washed them, got them really hot. You can also just use warm soapy water in the sink, and just as hot as you can stand it, because we want everything to be as sterile as possible. I have already pre-cut my chicken, just basically in uniformed cubes, and this is raw chicken, and that's exactly how we're going to put it into the jars. It's called cold pack. You can also do one, and it's referenced in the manual. It's called a hot pack, where you'll actually pre-cook the chicken for just a little bit and then put it in the jars. But if you're just wanting to skip one of the steps, it's quite acceptable to do it this way as well. So we're going to fill up these jars.
Another nice benefit of canning, other than it's convenient, is like in our case where we live in separate locations, if you will. We can can this, and if we're not at one of the residents where the electricity goes out, if the electricity's out and we don't know it, and everything in the freezer goes bad, we don't lose any meat. We don't lose any pork, chicken, or beef per se, because we can it all. So it's one of the great things about canning, especially for long term, for protein, to add to your food plan. Okay, the dehydrated freeze dried meals are great. They're convenient because you can buy them in bulk, but you're going to need a source of protein, and you're also going to need a way to eventually garden, to get fresh vegetables to supplement some of your dehydrated and freeze dried.
Go ahead and turn on the burner with the big canner, please.
I think I can do that.
And I meant to mention, I also have prepping as well the lids that will go onto these jars. What you do is, because of the rubber gasket that the lid itself has, you want to just soften that. You don't want to boil the lids, but you want to get them warm enough that it's softening up the gasket that's actually integrated into the lid, so that it just helps in the sealing process when it comes time. So in putting these in, I've made sure that I've kept a little bit of space at the top. If it's not there, then I'm going to pull a piece of meat out. I'm going to push this down in and just make sure it's packed good. I again refer to the booklet. It usually talks about leaving about a 1 inch to 1.5 inch head space, which generally is basically taking it up to the bottom of the jar. So once we have those in there, we're going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of salt to just sprinkle around the top. We're not going to put any other liquid in, because the chicken itself is going to go ahead and make its own broth.
And where'd you get that salt?
This salt actually came from one of our fellow comrades at Heritage Life Skills. He was set up in the, an area where some of the vendors are, and it originated from
Saltville, Virginia, which is outside of Marion, Virginia area. If you go through that area on Interstate 81, in between Abingdon, Johnson City area, headed east towards Wytheville, Virginia. But he is in there, and it was $5 per pint. And we've enjoyed having it over the last year. One of the great advantages of going to Heritage Life Skills in Waynesville, North Carolina, May this year, Mother's Day weekend, is the opportunity to obtain a lot of good resources, get good instruction, and learn new preparedness methods. Lucy, go ahead.
So another little handy thing to have in your canning, and you can get kits that have this included. This is called a lid lifter, and it's basically because I've got my lids in this prepping in this warm water right here to soften up that gasket that's on there. So you get ready to take them out. It's magnetic. It just hooks on there. And at the end, we're going to use this, which is a jar lifter, because again, when those jars finish up there, they're going to be extremely hot when we're able to take them out of the canner. So this is just an easy way to lift those up, and we'll demonstrate that more when we get to that point. So but you'll make sure that those lids have been cleaned off. We don't want any thing that fat wise from the chicken that might have come on there. So he's just going to take and wipe around on those and make sure everything's off of it. There's no salt sticking there. We don't want anything that would impede the sealing process. And then we'll be ready to put on our jars, or on our lids, excuse me.
Isn't this fun? Hey, if I can do this, anyone can do it.
So I'm basically using the little, I told you it was metal, so there we go. These don't need to be dry in any way. They're just going to drop right down on there. And then another part of the sealing process is you're going to have a ring that's going to hold the lid on there while it's going through the canning process. So here's your rings, wide mouth rings. For the smaller lid jars, you'll have the same setup, only it'll be the ones that actually fit onto that size like you see here. And this would have had a ring around it. I remove the rings once the jars are out and ready to store. You stand a chance of them rusting, and then it makes it very difficult to be able to get them off. And then also, as you're reusing your jars, you've got them available for the next time you're doing some canning. If you can get a hold of some jars that would be at a yard sale, estate sale, your mother-in-law is cleaning out their house and they're through with canning and you want to get into it, try to grab the jars, because the other supplies with the lids are ready available. If you buy the jars as a new set, it's going to come with these with the lids and the rings. Well, you end up having an enormous amount of rings. I have bags and bags of the rings, and of course the jars you're going to have to buy new, the lids you'll have to buy new, because you don't ever want to reuse this style of a lid. There is one that's available. We've not invested in it or used it, but they are reusable lids. So we may be up to trying those sometime and see how it goes. So we're putting on the rings. We just want to do those to be hand tight. Again, there's no liquid in these. It's going to do its own. We're just going to set these over into the canner. And I've got 8 pints that I'm putting in here, mostly because that's the number of pint jars that I had available. Weren't really totally planning on doing this, but on a grocery store run, we saw that there was a good buy on boneless chicken at $1.99 or so a pound. And
non-shot, no antibiotic chicken.
So this particular batch right here, meat-wise, is around $20 worth of meat. So we're setting all of these down in here. And really, I still have some chicken left over, so we'll say that it's not even quite $20 worth of chicken, because there's plenty right here.
Do you have another ring? This one has a little bit of rust on it, and it's not snug.
Okay.
Can we replace it? This was part of what she was talking about earlier, and the importance of reusing but double checking your hardware. So had we forced that on there, used it, and down the road when we went, it would have sealed, but we would have had a very difficult time getting it off, which could have led to possibly busting the lid, which would have ruined your chicken. Very good. I'm just going to toss this.
Okay. So that perfect perfectly fit my 8 wide mouth jars. So what we're going to do next is we've already put in the gasket seal on the lid. So now we're going to set this down on top, and there is a way for it to lock.
Fill up the arrows.
Make sure I've got it on the right side
You get
here.
your arrows lined up.
Let's try this side. Oh yes, there's a.
Hard to see it. It's got arrow. This particular model has an arrow on it, and you line up the arrows and you twist it lock.
So now this is going to
It's
twist
hard to
shut.
see.
And what we need to do in the meantime is this is on high heat, and this actually needs to be where we see steam coming out of it. That's part of what's called exhausting, because we're wanting to get all of the air out of the canner. And so once the steam starts coming out the vent pipe right here, we need to let that run for about 10 minutes.
There's steam coming out.
No, but this has to do 10 minutes.
Okay, so we're gonna stop this at this point, and we'll restart it when we get ready for the next step. So hopefully you've been able to, those folks that have been asking how to can chicken, hopefully this will help you. Until then, Miss Lucy, Bravo Echo, out. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got our timer set for the 10 minutes that we needed. You can see the, hopefully, the steam that's coming out. It is coming out here through this, where it's going to pop up when we actually have our full amount of pressure in. But for now, we have this steam coming out here. It's been going on for the last almost 9 minutes, so we're coming down to the final wire here. So when my timer goes off for the 10 minutes, I am going to put the heat up. We're at about medium right now to maintain this steam coming out at just a steady flow. And we'll turn that up to high. We're going to put on our weighted gauge again. This is for 10 pounds, and referring to the booklet, it is telling me that for chicken, we are going to do, without bone, which that was boneless chicken, 75 minutes. So I'll tell you when that is going to start. So we're going to go ahead and just knock this thing off on the timer. Timer off. Alexa, timer off. Timer off.
Timer canceled.
Thank you. So I'm now going to put on the weighted gauge. We're going to pop the heat back up to a higher setting, and what that's going to do is no more steam is escaping through the vent pipe, and so the pressure is going to begin building inside. As it reaches a maximum, you can see that this is going to pop up here. That's a good thing. It's not exploding on us. See, that popped up. That means our canner is locked. We do not want to open this lid for any reason. And now that this has sealed completely, you don't see any more steam coming out. So everything is going to continue to increase inside the canner. We will start to see the gauge on top is going to start to jiggle, that technical term again. And once it starts to rock back and forth, we will reduce the heat to where it just is kind of maintaining a steady rocking motion. You can get pressure canners that have what's called a gauge, and they're a little pricier, but if you feel like you would be more confident and comfortable in your canning with one that's specifically telling you, it will have numbers on it for your different pounds that you need. And I've worked with both. Fortunately, I've grown up in a family that cans, so I've been around canners all my life. I helped my grandmother snap the beans and clean those up, and my job was to pack those down into the jars and put the salt on top. So I've been around canners ever since I can remember, and that was with the kind that has the numbers displayed on the gauge. So again, if you think you'd feel more comfortable with that, that's certainly a route that you can go. So this is going to take a few minutes to kind of get this going.
So, a couple questions for you. So, let's say we weren't doing chicken and we were going to do beef. I know read in the book, but what would be a little bit of difference between canning chicken and canning beef? I know that we sear the beef.
Well, that's
a little bit.
exactly what I was going to say. So if again if you refer to your book, some things it's going to tell you that you want to brown or sear the meat first, and those would include bare, which I hope I never have to do that, but
we did
maybe.
have bare a year or two ago.
Not that we did, but at someone else's house. Beef, and we have done beef. We do ground beef. The reason that you're going to go ahead and cook down the beef is because it's going to be fattier than what the chicken is, and we don't want to have all the grease in the process for that. So with ground beef, we like to do it for the same reason. It's very convenient. It has a long shelf life. I can grab some that's 5 years old and I won't hesitate at all. Of course, if you're doing cooking with your canned meat, if you open up the lid and you see any discoloration beyond what you could expect, which in the case of the chicken here, because there's not going to be fluid, liquid all the way to the top of the jar. It's going to be whatever each individual jar makes for its own broth. The chicken that's not in the liquid will have a different color to it, but as long as it smells okay, it's going to be all right. It just visually is not going to look the same throughout the jar. So any of your meats, obviously, if you open them and they have a tainted smell to them, don't chance it. Just go ahead and throw them out. So we have done the beef, pork. We have done some pork, lamb, veal, and venison, and we have done venison. So beef, pork, and venison we have done, and in all those situations, we like to go ahead and sear ours. But again, it's all referenced in the book. This is your Bible of canning. So here we go. We've got our gauge is jiggling now. You see it kind of doing this rocking motion. This is when we want to start our timing. So Alexa, set timer for 75 minutes. We don't want to maintain the heat that it's at right now because this is rocking, obviously at a good speed. So I'm just going to go in and turn this down. And you'll have to stay close to your canner because as the heat varies, so's the jiggling. And so you don't want to wander off too far. You want to stay close by because if it starts sounding like it's getting too slow, then you'll want to crank the heat up just a little bit, and vice versa. If it's going too rapidly, you'll want to back off of the heat. So we basically can grab a bite to eat since it's now about 6:30. Watch a few more basketball games, go Big 12, and let the canner do the work for us. And we'll just check back in when it comes time to finish things up and let you know how to complete the canning process.
So, does anyone have any questions?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand. Just kidding. So for Hope for Survival, Miss Lucy and Bravo Echo, we're out, and we will be back when we get to the next stage. So hope you got something out of this, and thanks for tuning in. Till then, see ya. Hey everybody, Bravo Echo back with Miss Lucy, and I am really excited because we're now at the end of this canning experiment, if you will. And Miss Lucy is going to show you how you end it and then appreciate your little project. But first, Miss Lucy.
So, the apartment definitely smells like chicken. So, we did the 75 minutes, and then we had the heat turned off. You want to just take and slide or pick up your canner very gently off of the eye that you have it on. If you end up doing the smooth top cooktops, you still want to lift it up when you move it because it can scratch the surface of your top of the stove. So we just can have just the coil kind. So we moved it over. I've set it back to the original burner because I'm going to use that area right there with the countertop to download the jars. So you can see that the safety valve is back down. That means that this pressure is totally out of the canner. We take this off, there's no steam coming out. But now what is going to happen is when you take off the lid, all that steam that's in there has to escape somewhere. So when you're taking off the lid, always hold it up to where it's going to block your face from the amount of steam that's coming out. So as you're taking it off, don't go back with it or all that steam's going to come up in your face and it will really hurt.
And your forehead.
So here we go.
Block the camera. Hey, look at
And
that.
there we go. Those are steaming hot, as you can still see some that's coming out. So this is where the lifter comes in really, really handy, because otherwise, I've done it before, purchasing one of these where you go in with just a pot holder or something, but then that gets wet. And as you might know, and if you don't, I'll let you know a little secret. A wet dishcloth actually conveys more heat, so it will burn you even faster. So we just go in and grab it up. Make sure you've got a good grip on it. Set it over on a towel on your counter. And you will continue to see, and I'm sure that you can't from that distance, but the liquid that's inside of the jars, it is at boiling temperature. So you can see the little bubbles coming up. So it definitely reached that 240 degrees. And this is even after it took about 30 minutes for it to come back down off the pressure. It just, in that length of time, manually dissipated some of the pressure in there. That safety valve went down. That's when we knew it was safe to take off the lid. Now, once we have these setting over here on the towel, we're just not going to disturb them for the next 12 hours. We're going to let them seal up, totally cool off. And once we've, tomorrow morning, because it's pretty late right now, it's 8:15 in the evening. So we started this, about 3 hours ago with cutting up the chicken and getting everything together. So here we are with our cooked chicken. When I have a meal that I want to prepare, it's good to go. And again, I remind you that once these are cool, I'll wipe off the jars just to get off any residue. Take off the rings. Some people choose to leave them on, but because they've been wet, we find that they tend to rust and then they're even harder to get off. And then on the top of them, oh yes, what my husband really appreciates is as they're cooling, you're going to hear a little pop. It's going to go ding, and that just means that the seal is actually did occur, and that last of the air is escaping out of there. Also, you'll want to make sure that when you push down on the top of the lids, that they don't come back up. If you press down and it stays that way, they are sealed. If the lid pops back up, then that means for whatever reason you have a failed seal. So you'll just want to put that in a refrigerator and use it like you would any other chicken that you've cooked. And then we take a Sharpie pen and just on the top of it put the date and what's in it. It's pretty obviously that it is chicken, but just for everybody's purposes, go ahead and identify what it is with the date. So, hope that helped you out with taking away some of your fear or just not knowing exactly what to do in using a canner. It's really quite easy. And again, just make sure you follow these directions in the book.
And be safe. Any final questions? Okay. Well, we're going to close this one out, and thank you, Miss Lucy, for educating us on how to can chicken. It's tough getting her before this camera. So, thank you, and thanks for watching. Till next time, Bravo Echo out.